Hey everybody, there's a NATO summit happening in Europe next week. Well, this is like our version of that. It's mastering agility and scaling with agility. Two titans in the world talking about some topics today. So, Yuval, just in case somebody has missed your previous two experiences on mastering agility, can you remind us all who you are?
Yes, I'm helping people achieve better outcomes through their product organizations and their businesses and how they're structured. I'm a professionals from trainer and coach, safe guy, just trying to bring nuance to this role.
And for your audience, I'm Jim Sammons coming at you from Ohio in the United States. I'm one third of the Mastering Agility clan. And yeah, I do similar work to the other two guys on this chat. I'm helping clients large and small, experienced and just starting out with all things lean, agility, uh, value, objectives and key results, everything in that sphere. So that's me.
I'm Rich Fasowski. I'm here to help everyone see another team member's perspective and try to get on board with it to um, get that common picture, that shared understanding that helps you all achieve good stuff together. Um, like the other two people here, a professional Scrum trainer with Scrum.org, also a certified training partner with Sense and Respond. We've all gone through that recently, which has been pretty cool too. And outcomes have been top on our mind there, which I'm pretty sure we're going to be getting into here today. So, as always, great to be back here.
So speaking of outcomes,
Yes.
we had a nice conversation the other day about the somewhat ironic nature of teaching people to focus on outcomes using techniques like OKRs or, even user stories are trying to teach people to focus on outcomes. There's nothing new there. But the way we package the training that we provide is sort of the classic activity. So
Mhm.
we thought, let's unpack that a bit. Let's look in the mirror and look at, are we focused on outcomes? Are we as individuals? Are we as an agile industry, agilists, coaches, trainers? Are we walking barefoot, which is nice to connect to nature, especially if you live on a farm or next to a forest? But are we the cobbler's children, in a way?
I think we
Good point.
can be. I mean, this week I was just telling somebody not too long ago that I had to follow my own advice this week. And well, I mean, geez, I'm gonna hit enter on LinkedIn here later today, and you'll all see it. But effectively, the short version of the story is when I was hanging out with Rich a few weeks ago, he said, "Hey, I think you really should go do this thing," and I'm like, "Oh, what about focus? What about my own message to people that focuses about what you say no to and not what you say yes to?" And I was very conflicted. And then I thought about what would a measurable change in behavior be? Like, if I was going to do this, what's the outcome I'm after? What is it I'm hoping to do? Am I just adding busy work for no benefit, or am I just is it selfish busy work? Like, sometimes being busy and doing something is a very selfish is a bad word maybe, but it's a me thing versus a we thing, right? Like, I can self-justify better than anyone else in the world things that I choose to do.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean they'd hold up to any scrutiny or data or outcome type thinking whatsoever.
Yeah. We should talk sometime about no OKRs, no curs. You see that term? And OKRs?
No.
Yeah. Like the things you will not do. You're declaring your non-goals. So
Ooh,
it's
that's
an
interesting.
interesting one.
No KRs. I love
No
that. That's
KRs.
cool.
Yeah. I'll tag you on the conversation.
Okay.
They didn't come up with it. Um,
The outcomes you never want to see.
yeah. But I was hoping we challenge ourselves to talk about the training, aspect specifically. So this is the irony, right? When I go in and am asked to teach a class as a professional Scrum trainer, as a safe SPCT, as a sense and response certified training partner with an organization that its flag says outcomes over outputs over activities. But it's true for all of these organizations that we want to focus on value and transformation. What does it mean that a lot of what we do is measured by how many people get certification, how many people sit butts on seats in classes that were paid, hopefully a nice payment for a workshop that we deliver, where all we can promise is people have been through the experience, maybe got certified in something, maybe not. And I don't think the certification is that valuable. That's a different conversation. But have they been transformed? Are we going to see different behaviors? Is it going to have an impact? Hopefully, but that's not what we commit to. And I put myself out there on LinkedIn a couple of weeks ago, saying this is broken. Like, we are broken. We're not guaranteeing anything. We're guaranteeing the wrong things. We're focused on vanity metrics. And what would it look like if we started to focus on outcomes? If we were willing to say, don't pay us, or don't pay us all our, fancy day rate, if this is useless at the end. I deliver an OKR training, even if it's just a training. What would happen if I tell you, let's just talk 3 months from now about what's the impact that this made? What were the changes in behavior from this training? How would it change the dynamic in our industry? This was one of my most popular posts in recent times. A lot of people felt like a trainer cannot expect a Scrum Master or a coach to be accountable to results because it's out of their control, right? So it's interesting. I don't know. What do you think? Could you expect a trainer to be accountable to results?
I think it depends on how you're set up. And I struggle with this a lot too, because when I go to engage with a client, my ideal client tells me what they're trying to achieve, right? Because I get requests, can you run this PSM class? Yes, I can. Is that the right class? Like, what do you want? Right? Because sometimes it's not, we want to learn Scrum. I'd rather you take the Applying Professional Scrum class, right? We don't know about that. We know about the PSM, so we want to take it. Do you really? And so if I can help engage with that and say, what is it that you're trying to achieve with training? How do you know that this will have been successful? What can I do to help you learn that and check in, like you said? At that point, we're more focused on outcomes, the changes we want to see organization and the way that people are behaving and what they're doing, the ways in which products are getting managed, the amount of releases that they get into, and the less bugs that they're creating. There'll be lots of things that happen that show that this training had impact. And sometimes they're just not interested in that. They're like, if that's what you want, I will just go talk to another trainer that will just do the thing that I'm telling them to do, which is very indicative to me of how they run their organization, right? And what kind of actual benefit or outcome they'll get from it. Sometimes I take those gigs because I'm like, fine, if you're willing to throw all this money at me, and I need to pay my bills, sure, right? Okay. but there's times when like I've lost business on that because I've tried to actually get them to think about what they're spending that money on and how they maybe don't waste it. And they're like, yeah, fine, we'll just go somewhere else. So
I was reminded of this fact twice yesterday in two really different settings. But one was I got a call from a account manager / recruiter friend of mine in the staffing industry. And he said, Jim, I need your help. I need to source 2 excellent Scrum Masters really quick. I just emailed you the job descriptions and all this. Let's talk. So we got on the phone. I said, first off, you don't know what you're asking for. Where'd this come from? People don't like being told or even asked a question. What is it you're trying to accomplish? What's the ideal person? Why is that your ideal candidate? Like they don't like that. They're like, I already gave you all this stuff.
Why do you
Just
need a Scrum
do it."
Master?
Right. Okay. So
Let's start there.
yeah, like I've learned the hard way not to focus on asking those questions too much, because then I never get the opportunity to have the dialogue. But this is what I think is wrong with the staffing world is there is no value or on consultative staffing to say, what is it you need? What are you trying to accomplish? Anything around that. And it just leads people to be like, these are the 3 recs. These are the 12 bullet points. Just go fill me these people as cheaply as possible. Right. And then people are unhappy with the outcome. And then people like us say, well, of course you are, because you didn't approach the problem correctly. You didn't approach it from an outcome-based thing. You gave somebody a list of things to go do. They went and did it, and you're unhappy with the result. The only person you have to blame there is yourself.
I grew somewhat. We run different businesses, right? I grew notorious in a past consulting firm that I was a partner at, where I wasn't very good at generating business for staffing. And I wasn't the only one. I was at the top of the list of those that struggled with this. Because when you're, especially in this world of the agile roles, and maybe we'll get there, the finding a person, resources to tackle the problem is not necessarily the right approach. A lot of the time, the right approach is, different behaviors of the organization, but there are different options, right? If you're compensated by rev share on filling staffing positions for your client, if that's your business model, we're creating an ecosystem which is hard for everybody to thrive in. And I've lost business. I've lost business, like Rich has lost business.
Me too.
I've lost.
I made the list.
Yeah, it's a long list, and it feels some days that you're stupid because you're willing to stand up to your values and to focus on the customer outcomes and to have the courage to say some things. And some other days you feel like because you are standing up for your values, because like Rich is saying, you need to pay the bills, you're not courageous enough. And I think we're just representing a much bigger problem that this industry is having. Like, we have leverage as trainers, some leverage. It's not, it's not huge, but it's not nothing. As, people that do have names, do have experience, case studies. What I'm seeing more and more in the industry around me is this death spiral where we've put those same people that were staffed as Scrum Masters or Agile coaches in situations where they're compensated based on hours and billable hours, or they're W-2 employees and, they have a salary. What would I do if that's the way I'm compensated? I will create more and more activity. I will make sure that there are a lot of Agile events and that there is a lot of Agile theater and that I'm still needed. If I'm really smart, I screw the system by making sure that people stay attached to me. If I have too much integrity, I will, screw myself out of a job.
Yeah.
And maybe, that value follows me, and the fact that I created outcomes follows me. But the more the industry is going towards commoditization, it will be harder. And it will be even harder. So people that are still Scrum Masters and Agile coaches out there in organizations, they're seeing how many people are struggling. Do we really expect these people to be courageous, to speak openly about what they're saying, to really coach the leaders, to coach the system, to talk about what's really not working? No, I think I can understand why Agile theater is such a strong phenomena and why people struggle with speaking up to power about it. We're not
Are you
creating the
trying to
environment
say
where
that,
they
like,
can.
you're trying to say keeping the roof over your head is maybe a more motivating factor than creating change in the company that you just joined 7 months ago that, like, might fire you at any moment?
I think that that's a good question. I think that unless you're at a position where you might call it prosperous, you might call it, you're financially independent, you have enough money that you're willing to speak up, unless you're in that position where, if you still need to pay the mortgage, pay the bills, your family, I think it's an inherent conflict for anyone that wants to focus on outcomes and wants to bring courage. It's a struggle where I would totally understand why they would care more about, maintaining their job, maintaining the position, the contract, whatever it is, doing the hours instead of delivering value and going.
I think with that, the smaller your network is, the harder it is to live up to your values, right? And get paid for that, right? Because if you're working at a job, whether you're a direct employee or a contractor, right, coming in, and you don't know anybody else, and like the sense of, man, Rich always stands up for, calling out the issue that he sees, when we're in an organization. Yuval's always there to make sure that we are focused on the right things. Jim is always here to support us, and make me feel like I belong somewhere, something like that. If it's just that one team that you're working with and whoever your manager is, and they're the only people that get to, like, know you in that way, then if you get fired for doing the right thing, right, and you get fired mostly because somebody just doesn't want to hear it, you don't have the reputation to go along with you, right? But if that network, I think, exists either from previous places you worked at, other people that you connect to in meetups, just trying to get broader out there. To me, that gives me a little bit more of a willingness to say, yeah, maybe this isn't the right spot, and I don't feel too worried about trying to move on. Doesn't mean another job's going to be waiting for me tomorrow, but I'm like, I can find people who want me to be me and actually help them out. I don't know if a lot of us have just found that yet.
So to play the outcome versus activities versus output and impact card again, I think you're calling out one way to achieve forever employable status, which is
That's an
how Jeff
activity for it.
Gothel
Yes.
talks about it.
Yes.
Either forever employable, or I couldn't financially independent, which means I don't care.
Yeah. I'm not there yet.
When no, me neither. Far from it. But I think forever employable is something that is a good outcome for Agilists to strive for, because that's the only way that that maybe a controversial hot take, but I think that's the only way that they can be real Agilists.
Yeah.
So I think we're in for a shakeout. The shakeout is already happening from the perspective of there's fewer, agile roles that are available. There's, less interest in agile consulting. The theater, the focus on the vanity and the activities is coming back to haunt us. I think if there's ever a light at the end of the tunnel, my belief is that while agility will thrive and is thriving, people are working in agile ways. They'll continue to work in agile ways. That's not the question. Agile is not dead. But the agility advisory industry, coaching, whatever, has to start focusing on outcomes, has to start showing up in a way which is courageous and not the theater. And whoever is not able to do that will not be able to thrive in this place. And in order to be able to do that, you need to be high enough on the Maslow hierarchy. And, and it means some hard truths for people that are coming to us and asking, how do I get a Scrum Master position? How do I get into the Scrum Mastery role? I don't get those questions that often anymore, but it was very common, like a year, 2 years ago. That shouldn't be don't expect to go into this space unless you're closer to being forever employable, closer to being independent, is my take.
That aspect of courage is a big one, and in the last 5 years, I have been all over the spectrum on my opinion on that. Interestingly, when I felt like we as a group of people doing similar work needed it the least was when I saw the most focus on Maslow's hierarchy of needs at the most important things in psychological safety and all this. And I have said on Mastering Agility many times, like, I think many people talk about that stuff too much, but now it is pivotal because, in my opinion, answering only for myself, not putting words in anyone else's mouth, I feel the most courage when I feel the most other things like safe, respected, valued, confident of these other things. We cannot discount the relationship, in my case, I'll admit, direct relationship between courage and those things. And, 2 sentences that other people told me over the years, that I think kind of always rattle around in my head is, the unemployment line is full of people with strong principles and values. That's one. And another one is, a dead coach serves no one. Which both of those things kind of put your basic human needs. And I kind of adapt that second one to put your own mask on first. Like, there's a reason airplanes tell you to do that. Okay. If you have people with you, if you want to help others, if you have children with you, if you're unconscious, you are of no help to anyone else. The problem becomes when that's all you do is put your own mask on, or when putting it on takes 38 of your 40 hours a week and there's nothing left to do anything else. rinse and repeat. If that takes a month, then it's very normal that somebody might look at you and be like, well, what have you done this month? And effectively what you're able to say is, all I've done is take care of myself. Like, whatever that means, maybe doing the work that needs done, focusing on output and activities, whatever the heck it is, administering the tool.
Which I'd argue is not putting the mask on. I think there's a systemic issue here. There's a flywheel or a death spiral. I'm hoping that the flywheel, I don't know how to start it. I know what worked for me in the past is that often enough, my reputation, my notoriety for focusing on outcomes and not creating big transformations and not bringing or forcing you to create tons of new roles in the organization and very focused interventions, it created enough awareness, word of mouth, that even though I heard Steve Chandler talks about die before you coach or something along those lines. I need to look up the exact quote. But it's essentially a samurai mindset where going into the coaching conversation, going into an agility engagement, you're okay with dying. And by being okay with dying, and I don't think we need to really die for it, we shouldn't, really die for an agility conversation, but we should be okay with losing and not working with that client, not starting to work with the client or finishing our work with the team because, we said that we asked a too powerful question. We weren't willing to live with the theater. We took the theater mask off. And that was too uncomfortable for people. We want to be in a situation where we know that if that happens, we'll be fine. What I think is happening, it's happening for me. I'm hearing from a lot of people that it's happening to them as well. That flywheel is not good enough right now. Yeah. And that's starting to be dangerous.
You both are bringing me back to 3 days ago and 27 years ago at the same time. I just did a recertification for first aid, CPR, AED type stuff, right? I was a Boy Scout. I like to be prepared. I like to help other people. I like to know what I need to do to help other people in a moment of need. And the first thing you do before you go and help anybody is you check to see if the environment's safe. Right? Like if you're going to put yourself at risk, and now there's 2 people that need to go and get help rather than just one, you don't get involved, right? And this is you showing up as somebody who can offer help if there's an opportunity. This is not your job, right? Or anything like that. So you want to help out in the moment of need, but you should do it if it's safe to go and do so. But then 27 years ago, I was a lifeguard out on the beach in New Jersey. And you specifically have to have the courage to put yourself in some dangerous situations to save a life. And sometimes you're doing so like knowingly and relying on your training and getting out there to try to help somebody else out. I think firefighters and police officers and other, first responders do this all the time. But I'd have to look at a situation and say, can I get out there and perhaps help somebody, knowing I, might be at risk too, but believing I can actually get through this? Or is this so dangerous that I literally have to watch somebody die? Thankfully, I never had to do that. Right. There was a very close situation once, but we didn't get there. And that's a really hard thing, and I think of our work And if I'm going to go and get involved with somebody, and especially if I'm going to consult with them, right? It's another position of, here I am coming into this thing. There is some danger in this situation. Something's not going right. That's why you asked me to come in as an expert to help and try to move things and turn them around. So I believe I can, and hopefully they believe that they can too. Maybe sometimes you look at them and go, actually, no, this is not worth both of our safety to get involved.
Yeah.
You ever put yourself in those positions or had others get like that, positions like that?
Something I've said on here many times is one of the death knells of innovation and outcome type thinking is just tell me what you want me to do. And that's why Yuval and I have talked many times about, the different strategies of a consultative and coaching type of statement of work versus a very specific and finite, like, come in and do this thing type of approach, right? Because I know it's not right, and I know it's not what he's doing, but there are many people, and I feel it in myself, like a very specific focus for a little bit of money or a lot of money is still seen as it feels to me like my way of saying, just tell me what you want me to do. Like in your example earlier, Rich, of like, you may have made, I don't know, let's say $15,000 if you had just kept your mouth shut and went and taught the class that the client asked for. And somebody like me could tell you, yeah, but while you go do that, you can advise them on things and you can sell them on things and you can show them this wasn't the right class or the best, or maybe we could have done this or whatever. Like, sure, all of those Monday morning quarterback type things could happen. But what I think this comes down to me, is the question that we were talking about before we hit record, which was, what do we see in people who are people doing more, less, or about the same of challenging the right thing, saying the hard thing, saying the quiet part out loud, as I phrase it, whatever. And I think we're seeing less. I feel myself doing it less. I see other people's doing it less. And I'm even advising my friends, family, and people I work with to exercise more caution, not to not do it. I'm not saying keep your mouth shut. I'm saying put your own mask on first. Just a bit, okay? And I wanna reflect, I just wanna tell a super brief story. A few years ago, I was working in the oil and gas industry with a very massive household name. And there was an executive there, and I forget his exact title, SVP, something like that. And he specifically sought me out for one-on-one advice. And throughout a bunch of our conversations, he said a phrase to me that I'll never forget. He said, one thing I'm so happy about, I can finally do the right thing. And I'm like, I was gobsmacked, like, to use a British term. What do you mean by that? Well, I'm about to retire in the next year. There's nothing that can be wielded against me. He felt ultimately safe and therefore happy to be able to do the right thing, courageous enough to challenge the right thing and all that stuff. And I've told this story, a longer version of the story on Mastering Agility, so I don't want to belabor the point, but that was just one of 100 reminders in the last few years of that same exact concept. Do you all have similar stories, whether it's with yourself or with others, about that?
Uh, I think it's actually a great segue to talk about what we could talk about in our next conversation, because I think that notion of how do you put the air mask on, what does that actually look like, is an interesting conversation in and of itself. Like I said earlier, financially independent or about to retire, or I have enough of a name that I know the moment I've finished an engagement, I have one slot open. I know that I have a waiting list of people waiting for me. That's putting the air mask on, and putting the air mask on for in that way enables you to do the right thing in an engagement. I don't know that there's a way to put your air mask on in an engagement. I need to think about it some more. So I'd be happy to talk more about it.
Jim, your story made me put a phrase in my head, because it maybe runs a little counter to what you were just saying, because the phrase is there's no courage in safety. If you're already safe, what do you need the courage for? There's no risk. There's nothing to be courageous about, right? Versus, so I'm glad that this person finally, at least for a year, got to help out people in the way that they should have been getting help for probably a decade. And that's awesome that they finally got that. There's more safety perhaps in opportunity. And if we're lacking opportunity, that's when we start to struggle a little bit, right? That's when, it's easier to lead into that, just tell me what to do, right? And hope that we get to a better place afterwards. I go a little more towards the anti-fragile, side of things there, that your job isn't actually safety. Sure, you're getting a paycheck every week or every month or whatever, and you got this, employment contract and stuff. But you can be fired, right, at any time. And maybe if you're towards the Scrum Master you're talking about before, Yuval, like actively working just to make themselves needed, but without creating change, maybe you should be fired. Because you're not really doing your job. And if that's the case, like, cool, what's the next thing, right? Like with us all running our businesses, we have to constantly think about what's the next thing. How do I continue to move ahead? Because engagement might last a long time, might be really short. A bet that we take in hoping that this will expand into something else and we will be able to create more of that meaningful change and impact, but the client might not pay off. We have to go do something else. So, all those pieces require a bit of courage because there is no safety net to get into it. And I feel a little bit more, feel that in the work that I do and the work I do with other people.
All right, we dropped some heavy stuff here. So let's close here. Thank you for joining us for this special episode of Mastering Agility together with the Scaling with Agility podcast. For Jim and Rich, I'm Yuval. See you around.